Good?
Yep, 5:30.
Okay. John?
Trust me to get here.
I'm sorry, sir.
He had been speeding. No, I'm reading back.
Okay, I'd like to open the work session for the determination of unsafe building for the town of Culver. And I guess, Mr. Dante, this is your show.
I guess. And since I'm kind of acting as building commissioner right now, I thought moving forward into this year, it'd be a good time to start talking about how we're going to process unsafe building. Comfortable with the BZA material and the plan commission material. Marshall County is operating as our building commissioner right now in terms of inspection. And had a conversation last week and this week with Adam, kind of straightening some things out expectation wise and come to an agreement. Adam has graciously agreed to kind of take it on as an unsafe building inspector. Given his expertise, obviously I'm not qualified. I don't have the expertise, don't have experience. And so I wasn't comfortable doing it. Adam is. So in light of that, I thought it would be a good time to sit down with council, make sure you understand, or at least talk with legal as well about a process that I think is there. I'm looking for feedback, solicitation. We can remove stuff, add stuff as need be. Council will probably have some advice for us. But getting this process that's just loose language. Getting the process clear in place before proceeding. There's several properties right now that have been mentioned. I have visited them. There's one being worked on that I'm a bit concerned because the work has stopped and the windows are open. And that is something we can talk about. But first I'd like to I don't know if you have a chance to look at this process. It's lengthy. It's not meant to be, this is the process. These are just things that I pulled off, gleaned, looked at other communities and thought maybe we could discuss and seek your advice on. It's kind of procedural, as you notice, starting from the very start with complaint, right? I think one of the things that I'm having trouble with is that we have a community that cares a great deal about the community with different expectations of what property should look like. And that becomes problematic. How much does opinion on what is unsafe, unsightly? You hear it oftentimes in council. You guys have heard it coming in. What is unsightly is not unsafe, right? But how do we address unsightliness or blight, if you want to call it that, versus what is truly unsafe? And where does citizen complaint come in on that? How do we process that and consider that? What's the avenue for that complaint? Is it formal? Rather than getting up, the thing I'm uncomfortable with, council, is the meeting pop up, right? Somebody just on a visceral, I was walking down the street today and I saw, right? Well, that's pleasant and that's very nice. Congratulations. I hope you had a great stroll. But I think it needs to be a more formalized complaint process. I think they need to be able to file it. And I defer to the attorney here. Is that something we can ask and demand of somebody to come in? If they have a formal complaint, they have to write it out. And I think so as well. I think so. And I think we're going to stop taking emails. We're going to stop taking meeting shout outs. If a citizen wants to issue a complaint on a property, I'm going to insist that they formalize, and I'll make that, or I'll have Kevin, that's yet another document. Maybe I'll crank one out and see.
Falls right in line with.
Yep.
Creating a proper form that lays out, first of all, the reasons why a building might be considered unsafe or fall under the category of this procedure, just to eliminate, a lot of what you're talking about. Like, if it doesn't check a box, it's probably not going to be something that's going to qualify as a unsafe building. I mean, you can make you say where's the tipping point between unsightly and unsafe, and I think they're two very different things. You can restrict unsightly ordinances, but that's a different process.
Mm-hmm.
This is a statutory process. You guys have already adopted. I brought your policy, but a certain amount of procedures for this, which cites Indiana code I mean, the unsafe building process ultimately could lead to demolition of the house. And so it's a pretty serious process, and there's a due process element where you ultimately have to get court approval. And so before you start tearing people's houses down.
Right.
But the unsightly part, well, you've been in communities or seen communities that can control the way things look very tightly. I mean, you can have, limitations on height, limitations on what the facade needs to look like, how well maintained your yard has to be, fines for, leaving out your trash cans. I mean, all kinds of things. That's all within the parameters, but I think that's a different discussion.
It is. I would agree. And that's not something I would suggest. That's not something I put in here.
I would think it's a different, I'm not saying.
Kevin, when we say unsafe, we're saying unsafe to the homeowner and the general public, maybe if it's in the yard.
Yeah, and if since we brought it up, and I'm sorry, if you turn to page 2, that's sort of what everything else under source of concern is a municipal official or somebody. It's the citizen input that I've wanted to kind of touch base on. But inspection evaluation criteria, which is laid out, and that's where Adam would come in. But structural instability is obviously one that we really need to consider. Fire hazard is definitely one. These are some of the conversation I had with Adam. Unsafe electrical, plumbing, and mechanical systems. And unsafe being a fire hazard, there's an overlapping on that on the electrical side. Plumbing probably a little less. Adam said that's probably weighting a little less, but the mechanical and the electrical is the big one on that one, he says, on the inspection. Dilapidation or deterioration, which is different than structural instability. Structural is foundation, oftentimes limited to, which is different than dilapidation or deterioration, which is more on your studs. He talked about roof, window sills, that kind of stuff. Unsanitary conditions. That one, he says, problematic sometimes. That in his experience, that's not one he's dealt with a lot of times, and I think that kind of overlaps back to what you were saying, Kevin. Vacant and unsecure structure. Again, that's usually not a tear down thing, but a vacant and unsecure structure is a hazard, especially for kids, that kind of stuff. He said we have to be wary of is where we have windows out, doors out, foundations exposed, that kind of stuff within the structure itself that could present a hazard or vacancy. There we go. But that usually is another one that he said doesn't oftentimes lead into demolition, but it's one that you want to secure for liability reasons, and the property owner needs to be aware of it. Conditions constituting a public nuisance or hazard. He said he throws that one in there. It can get to that limit. It can get to that level, but again, it goes back to what you were saying, Kevin. I would suggest that one falls off, because that falls much more under our ordinances and things that we can control, not so much statutory maybe on that sense, but those are what he would consider. That's not comprehensive, but those are sort of where he lives.
That last one, someone's storing hazardous chemical, or they let their front yard become like a landfill.
Yeah.
Essentially hazardous.
Yeah, when I've seen it progress to a demolition is when you have it's always been, in my experience, a vacant house that becomes more and more deteriorated over time. And the more deteriorated the house gets, the more compelling it is for young boys, and they climb in there, and now you really created a hazard. You got door, if it appears to be abandoned, then kids are drawn to it. And now you got kids in a house that is got bad wiring and is a tinder box perhaps. And I'm jumping way ahead here, but some of the things you get into, and I won't name names to protect the innocent here, but certain county I was familiar with in the town had a building, a downtown building collapse. And it left a pile of rubble, which was a nuisance, and the county was going to go clean that up. But one of the first things you do is you get a test for asbestos. Well, it was full of asbestos. Have you ever priced out what it cost to remove rubble? So we looked into the statutes. What we did is put a 10-foot fence around it, which you can then assess the cost to the property owner. But the county put up the fence just to keep kids out of there because the cost of foot was tremendous and there wasn't any funds to do it.
Right.
So you run into those problems too, where it's like, I mean, if generally if it's a property worth maintaining, keeping, it has some equity value for the owner, you can pressure that owner through fines or whatever to bring that property up to a certain level of safeness. But when you have some properties that are so far gone, nobody wants them or cares, they haven't paid the property tax on it, they just abandon it. That's a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Kevin, again, the starting point would be arbitrarily just seeing the outside of the house, not knowing what's in the inside, just by doing the outside, there's an assumption that maybe what's in the inside of the house too is as bad, or we're looking just at the perimeter and the house itself on the outside.
Well, going,
So we're not,
yeah,
so,
going back to the source of concern.
right.
So depending on who's reporting it to me. And if a citizen's going to report it, they're going to fill out a form. If we have a municipal law enforcement, one of our fire departments, somebody that's within our municipal network have an issue, I'm probably going to take that directly to Adam Combs. And that's the first step. So what I've got to, I will go down and take a look at the property, Dana. And see, and just to validate, if let's say I get a complaint form, I'm going to validate that complaint form. And then I'm going to process it. You take a look, I do initial documentation. I think that's important. Create a file, right? Because you're going to want that paperwork trail all the way from the very beginning. So written complaint logged with the town of Culver, case file created, property ownership verified through the Marshall County records. That's on me. I take that information, I hand it off to step 2, preliminary inspection. That goes directly to Adam Combs. I'll report it to him, give him copies of the file, as well as maintain our own. Inspection at that point is going to be in his hands. And that removes me from the process, an unqualified individual, but I'll be a participant with him as a town representation. So I would visit the site with him. If we would go, and the initial inspection would go, at that point, Dana, he's the one that determines whether or not there's valid reasons to go in and to further investigate the complaint. We're seeing that right now, unless we get somebody in qualified to do it as a building commissioner, we're going to see that authority over to the county. Oftentimes a little bit more convenient too. You get an objective person not living in town, that kind of stuff. Once authority for entry, that's consent of the owner or occupant. That isn't changed. Administrative warrant if necessary. Let's hope it never gets that far, right? But that is something within. Kevin, anything to add on the legal that I'm not familiar with? I just pulled that off.
Well, I appreciate that he's willing to help, but I think legally they're obligated to. I think the county is obligated to do this unless the town by ordinance takes it on themselves and creates their own.
Right. And
So-
Steve did for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
Having the county involved, I think it's nice that he's agreeing to do it all anyway, but I think they are
Yeah.
technically obligated to do it anyway.
Okay. That's good to know. He was never got that point. He was
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's
so
right.
he probably knew that. That's probably why he was so, sure thing, buddy.
Yeah, okay.
Is
Great
an
guy.
administrative warrant where we would try to get a warrant to enter because we don't have consent from the owner? That's done through you, the
Yeah.
attorney, and okay.
You'd have to petition the court.
Yeah. Okay. We've done inspection evaluation criteria. That again, I would defer whatever, this is something that Adam provided me, but he's got a comprehensive list that he would provide us and move through. At that point, the documentation will occur one way or another. I think and I talked to Adam a little bit, he usually documents anything that he finds problematic, but I would also document, I said, I just need, if there is no issue, I'd also like demonstration of that as well. Why isn't this? I think equally as important to explain why it is also why it isn't. And so if he could provide that kind of why he based his determination, I always want evidence behind that either way. So his documentation would include photographs, written inspection report, code citations, and professional findings and recommendations. Taking those recommendations will be the next step, right? Depending on that case, you think of it as an and or right now, a switch. Those would go into the documentation file, and then we would proceed accordingly. Determination of probable unsafe condition. And so whether or not I'm going to report out to the council and to the unsafe building, what the determination was. Adam will prepare a written report stating whether probable unsafe conditions exist. Report will be submitted by me to you guys and will be read publicly. Administrative review, Culver Building Commissioner reviews. I'll take a look at the inspection findings on my own. Applicable state statutes, that's on me to research and probably give Kevin a call and put local ordinance to it. So attaching what he found specifically to why and what's the legal basis for it. And that's, I think, also important going into the file. That way it's documented moving forward. And then there's a decision to proceed, and that is where we meet you guys officially. Evidence to support unsafe condition. Matter is referred to the town Culver Unsafe Board. We'll schedule a hearing. We'll get it up, and then it is presented to you. Am I missing anything? Any input right now?
I would just say, just like our other issue, we were talking about the sufficient water forgiveness, I would narrow down the issues that need to be decided by the board. I think where we run get inconsistent and get ourselves in troubles when we leave it too open-ended. There should be, you have to decide, whether or not it fits this criteria or not. Not just a general, well, let's give it more time. Let's just make that decision. And it should be, then you go to the next step, which is whatever that's going to be, enforcement wise, a fine or whatever. Kind of take some of the emotion out of it, but we get to that.
Okay. So would I
Try to
just
make your job a little easier. So you're not, you're dealing with the public and trying to explain why. I mean, it's got to be as cut and dry as we can make it.
So how does that, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but just for clarity's sake, how is that going to be different than the report that Adam provides?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. And but I understand what you're saying. He's going to provide us the evidence.
Right.
It's our job to say, these are the categories, and guess what? You satisfied them or didn't satisfy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
I mean, it's really just a due process thing,
Yeah.
really, right? You got your report right here. The person can come and say, hey, wait a minute, this report is wrong for these reasons. So you got this due process step where you at least have a finder of fact that can hear that complaint. But for the most part, absent them having some concrete reason why the report is flawed, it should be a pretty straightforward vote.
Gotcha. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
All right. And I've taken this kind of from our stuff quite a bit. Notice of unsafe building hearing. We'll prepare the notice, and Karen, we do that. Legal description of the property, summary of violations. This is just for my own sake, so I don't miss something. Required corrective actions, date, time, and location of hearing. That is sort of what Steve's policy was moving forward, and it doesn't have to be, but it seemed to work. And so that's where I'm at. Okay. We'll serve the notice, certified mail to owner of record, posted on property, and published notice is required if required by law. How often is that required notice published?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, good, because I couldn't find it either. Yeah, I thought it was dumb. Okay, thanks. That is good to know.
I mean, in some ways, you're probably notice of unsafe building hearing. What is the unsafe building?
You're right. Right.
So, interesting way you are publishing public notice.
Yeah.
Because usually we put the address in of what property we're discussing, because that allows a neighbor to speak to it or someone else.
Yeah.
I haven't dug into that in a while. We'll get it,
Okay.
put it in the materials, because sometimes the legislators down in the state get cute and say it must be published, not more than, but
Right.
not less than.
Yeah. And when you have a publishing schedule like ours, that's,
And they don't tell you if you missed the window what you do then.
yeah, right.
I love
Start
that.
over.
You did put it
Yeah. That was me conceding. I couldn't find it. I saw, it was instant, I just didn't know. So, I don't know. But it's there, compliance to timeline, owner, given statutory period, prior to hearing, and that is, required by law. Questions? I drew a line there, pause.
That statutory period is,
No, but I know it's required.
okay, right.
Thank you, Joe.
Just curious.
No,
I
I
mean,
too.
I'm like when do the, we've notified them, when do the fines start? Or what do the fine schedule look like?
Yep.
Is it fines if they don't comply within so much time or?
Yes,
I would say typically it's an order. So it'd be you would take the report and you would order certain things to be repaired. And yes, give them a certain amount of time to do it before you would find them. So there would have to be a follow-up, yeah. Did those things happen? And then I guess you'd have to have the building inspector check to make sure they got done right.
the fine schedule too, from what I read, and I only looked at a few communities, but the fines, to my opinion, excuse me, kind of designed so you don't end up in the final phase, right? That you don't have this moment where it's yes or no, right? You're trying to help, the idea behind this is that you're trying to help the homeowner meet certain timelines and dates, right? And having an accountability factor. And in light of that, many of these fines are not overly punitive. From what I could see, there are some that are stiffer than others, especially for electrical compliancy. If there's a fire hazard involved, they're definitely punitive, but a lot of these aren't as bad as what.
And I think that's where the board comes in, there's some discretion too, because you're always walking the line between, are we dealing with somebody that's just unable financially to comply? And so we don't want to just add to the problem by
Right.
giving them fines they can't afford. Or do we have somebody that's just being completely difficult and unwilling to comply?
Right.
Has a difference of what the law is, and the fines are the only thing that's going to get them moving. You have the advantage in this town of about anything is worth something.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And so there's a lot of towns where that's not the case.
Yeah.
So there's typically somebody waiting in the wings that's willing to take that property and fix it up and alleviate that person's obligation. And that's where I think if you could offer a safety valve that, okay, you accumulated all these fines, you're unwilling to cooperate. If you sell the property, the fines will be forgiven. If you get it into somebody else's hands, it's going to do something. That's what you want. You're not looking to fine a bunch of people, collect a bunch of fines. You're looking to get compliance and make sure that
Yeah.
there's unsafe buildings.
You want the
So
itself to change.
And just, yeah,
you can get creative with it at that point.
absolutely. And this is just the guy in me always thinking. I think there's also a cautionary thing with that, and that is that we don't weaponize it
Yeah.
for somebody who wants to
Oh.
acquire property,
Yeah.
right? Who will just go after somebody. And that's a greater fear at times for me in this town than the latter.
Actually just put a lien on it because he would rather threaten my life at the time and stuff like that. And he at one point in time could afford to make the change, et cetera. He just had animosity in him toward the town.
Mhm.
It was kind of scary about the threats at times, but I think we ultimately put the lien on it. And eventually that particular property sold. I don't know that we ever got a check for that lien, but I know we put a lien. I think we did actually.
I mean, if it was something that you.
Yeah.
If you have a recorded lien, they shouldn't be able to, shouldn't have been able to sell it without satisfaction.
So number 5 is not new. It's just the unsafe building, board hearing, quorum established, all that good stuff. Minutes taken. Presentation of evidence is kind of procedural for the hearing. Inspector Adam Combs will be here. I'll be here present for administrative summary, photographs, documentations that were put together. That would be where you guys would get a copy of the compiled record for your review. I think more importantly, the owner's opportunity to respond, present evidence on their own, offer repair plan, provide contractor. This is I like to see this as an opportunity to form a relationship with the homeowner and that could possibly resolve. The intention here is to resolve the issue, not to escalate it, right? And I think building that in, I don't know if you do that in this order, but that's how we've done it. And so, board deliberation, the consideration, is this something that's done in the moment? Kevin, that's a question, and to the board too. Should we put an incubation period on this where you get the evidence and give it consideration? Do you do it right after the consideration of the evidence during that same meeting? Is there something, and that's really a question for you guys.
You can always table issues for the, saying you'd like additional evidence, and then identify what that evidence is, and
Okay.
then gather, have to make rash decisions ever. You can always.
Yeah, it's built
buy
in
more
then.
time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, all right, you can suspend and hold. All right, good deal. All right, that kind of answers that for me, and there's nothing really for me to do, sit back and watch you guys do your magic. Determination order with the board findings. Again, all these are being documented and put in the file. I won't keep saying that, but formal finding whether structure is unsafe, not unsafe, unsafe but repairable. Those are categories that, again, I'm using somebody else's work. Is there anything I'm missing there? I don't think we go into the whole blight, unsightly, just leave that alone. It's this, or this. We don't have to comment on anything else.
There's other ordinance anyway.
100%. And if that's the case, it shouldn't be making it this far anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
You know, not having debris and hazardous materials in your yard, et cetera. We might be able to strengthen it. I agree, you're dealing with blight differently than you are with
Yeah.
unsafe.
It should go down a separate path and never make it this far.
There's probably a category, and I couldn't tell you what to call it yet, between not unsafe and unsafe, where you say it's, yes, you're not unsafe right now, but these are, recommendations
Right.
of the repairs that should be done in the next years, like.
I think-
My doctor says I don't have high blood pressure yet.
Yeah. That's I think I got these out of order. I think it should be unsafe but repairable, right? Start taking your blood pressure medicine and by the way, yeah, you're fine. Go forth and eat McDonald's. Okay.
It could be.
Board recommendations.
Not
Determined unsafe, but board
recommended.
recommendations of repairs, something
Yeah.
innocuous.
Yeah.
Let them know. So it also establishes a record for the next time if it comes up back. Well, you were here before. We told you to do these
Yeah.
things. Now you've gotten to the point where this really isn't unsafe. But
All right. Issuance of orders, right? Again, possible orders could include, and I think whatever they may be, going back to what Kevin said about criteria, I think the most important thing is these are simple, small sentences and precise on what we expect to be done, right? In terms of orders, hence the term order. You don't want to have to interpret anything. Repair within a specific time frame. I think time and expectation has to be set. What that includes, secure structure, vacate premises, demolish structure, remove debris, obtain permits are some of my favorite, right? Because they just are simple imperative sentence, right? And you implied.
And the only thing I think that might be added to that would be, if you've got a time frame, so you got a repair order and you've got a time frame, depending on what the unsafe feature is, you could add safety precautions, like the fence there.
Yeah. Secure the area.
Yeah, it had to be secure. If you could have some time to fix that problem because it's going to be expensive to fix, but you have to protect the public in the meantime. Whatever that's going to have to be, who knows what that would be.
Also with the time frame, I think reading it too, I think it didn't say it, but when I was reading through things, I think I think it's important to have regular communication and not give them, here's the start date and here's the due date.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden on the due date, nobody's visited me, nobody's communicated with me. There's a lot of awkwardness there. So building in milestones, check-in points, communication.
It's a lot of man hours.
It is. I got tons
though. Sure.
of, but yeah, it is. But if it gets this far, hopefully we're not dealing with that many cases that way. But if it gets that far, I just think it makes it easier moving down the line. And it just, I think it helps communication, can kind of avoid problems sometimes.
Check in with them. If they don't know how to fix the electric
Right.
and they're having a problem getting anybody to come and give them a bid.
Assistance with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you can be able to either provide them assistance or give them another month to find somebody,
Right.
you know.
What would the time frame be? Like, is it a time frame to find somebody first and then go from there? Cause I mean,
Well, some of that could be done by the person themselves if they're qualified.
yeah.
I wouldn't answer that question until I know
I
what.
know everything's maybe a little different case by case,
That's
but
what
how do we determine that or keep it?
I think you have to factor in the severity of the problem. How, I mean, is it severe? Is it not severe? Securing the area and safety, how easy is it to secure? Can you do it for a longer period of time? Right? How imperative is it? So I think that has to be a consideration.
Is that something maybe Adam could recommend? Like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I mean, is that something, a time frame that he could? Cause I just like, I beg, oh, a time frame, but what is that?
Yeah,
timeframe?
going
Is it
back
a
to
year?
what,
Is it a-
again, we don't want to have to
3 months
interpret
or-
these things.
Well, I think a lot of that, they're just gonna be a case by case basis. Well, I think the first issue there is, who is it unsafe to? Most of these are gonna be unsafe to the homeowner. I mean, is it unsafe to the homeowner? Well, yes, and we can force a repair, but, is that as concerning to the board as something that's unsafe to the public that could cause an injury to an innocent third party?
Right.
In that case, that needs to be fixed much quicker.
And some of the properties that were discussed, that oftentimes come up at Culver are not occupied. They're vacant. So I think they're less imperative, right, in terms of safety to the individual. But safety to the public.
As long as there's some sort of.
That's right.
Some sort of safety measure
Yeah.
while they're working on it. Yeah, some,
Yeah, if there's windows open or something.
That's it. And that's,
Unsafe.
I mean, I'll
signage and fencing and things like that. Put up.
currently on Ohio Street, there's property Steve had, and they've been working on it for quite some time. Driving by it today, I had a complaint. Driving by it today, the windows are not boarded. They're wide open. The door is open. The property's not secured. There's construction going on. It looks like it on appearance, but I'm not sure how long they have. They have notices posted for permit, but I have an unsecure site.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me. Is the building unsafe? I can't comment. What I do know is there's construction going on and there were issues with that building and it's open now. If it were secure, I think I'd feel less, right? It's not so much.
Right.
And so I pass that on to Adam. And
Most of your construction is netting off this site.
right.
You usually have fencing.
This is not being done by one of them apparently. So that's another issue maybe, but we want to help and we don't want to create problems and they have been working on it. But so I think that's an example of what we're talking about.
I think that was a house that I keep picturing. This one that's just, looks like it's got a new roof, but then nothing else has been done.
That's right. That's and
Got a new roof, but it's got big
Tell
open
him-
holes and.
tell him what he's won. Yeah. Okay. Written order, prepared by or under supervision of the Culver Building Commissioner, includes findings of facts from the case itself, very similar to BZA. Conclusions, compliance, deadline, notice of right to appeal. Obviously, they have a right to appeal. There's a separate legal process for that. And then the service order, again, kind of posting and mirroring what we did for notification, certified mail posting on the property and filed with Marshall County records if required. And usually Karen's good on prompting when that is and isn't, but trying to respect time too. So if I'm going, still got time. Compliance monitoring, the follow-up inspections, again, utilizing Marshall County Building Commissioner or designated official, documenting that compliance progress. I'm happy to make site visits. You know, if we give a schedule of repair, I think it's important for the initial inspection or inspector to be present to assess whether or not that progress is being made, because they're the ones that determine that progress needs to be made. They've identified the issues, and I think I'd like to use their expertise to tell me they're being satisfied. If not, it's visceral observation on my part without qualification. And that can become problematic legally down the line. So want to try to make sure that we're avoiding any type of issues and being fair to the homeowner. Failure to comply, probably the bigger part of it. Matter to return to the unsafe board. If we're not getting compliancy, we're going to bring them back in. Authorization of the town action. If we've got an emergency action, going back to your question, Joe, if we've got a non-compliancy on an issue that is an emergency, I think that's a different course of action. But do we contract for if it's a repairable issue?
That's back to a funding discussion.
Okay.
Do you have a fund for that? Probably not.
We actually do have
We
an
do.
unsafe building fund.
We do.
So there you go.
Courtesy of property. It's about 69,000.
Okay.
It's from.
All right, well, that's
So,
great.
yeah,
So yes, of course you could then fast track this process and get, and then spend what is taxpayer dollars and then seek reimbursement or lien.
Well, lean through the recorder's office.
Yeah.
If we do, I love playing hypotheticals. If we do a process where we lean it
Mhm.
and we do the repairs ourselves.
Yeah.
There will be an eventual reimbursement one way or another.
Foreclose on the lien.
There you go. That's
I
all.
mean, now you don't have to wait forever.
No, nope.
Yeah.
Okay. Or demolition, right? Those are going to be the choices. And that's, I think, I'm less concerned with somebody being non-compliant on a repair issue or something that we decide is not unsafe, but is repairable, that kind of thing. I'm just specifically more concerned, and hopefully I'll hand off the football before any of this ever happens. But moving down the line with whomever we do form a relationship with, I just want to be clear on the cases where we have an emergency situation, which I don't think have come up, but I don't want to wait for them to come up. So, okay.
Do they still have the blight program? Are you familiar with the grants? You guys ever dealt with those?
Yeah, no, yeah,
Little hesitant to go that route. You have to designate
Takes a long
that
time. I
as
know.
blight, et cetera.
there's some lily money being discussed about it too, but it's a blink, it's not immediate.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah,
I've seen it done. And
Yep.
It's great when it works.
Yeah.
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 it is.
You don't put your own funds at
Right.
risk. But
Yeah. Okay,
I think it was like good 5 or 6 years ago, it set aside that particular fund that Karen mentioned.
Right.
Because at the time too, we were dealing with a commercial business that we're still kind of doing that. We thought that could get expensive, so we budgeted it a couple of years in a row, if I remember right. And then since we didn't spend it out, it's just kind of sat in that fund.
Not a bad idea to build that up. I mean, because some of these cleanups, I've just seen some of the estimates and they're
Yeah, it's not.
astronomical.
Yeah, they are.
If asbestos.
Yeah, even just demolition alone can be very
Or
expensive.
if you ever get into a gas station with underground.
Oh, tanks.
It's a whole nother ballgame.
and usually, and that's sometimes, but sometimes it's almost a blessing because item comes in
Yeah.
a lot of times with support on those, just to get the hazard out. I know item
Yeah.
came
They
from,
cleaned up our
that's
property
right,
here.
yep, up by the theater, right, Jenny? Yeah, we had some tanks removed from up there. Enforcement cost recovery, we kind of touched on this already, deleting some things, so, and that's kind of out of my purview anyway. At that point, I'm bringing in town attorney for advice. So I've got you on speed dial. Appeals, and this is just to make sure we're not missing anything. Right to appeal, property owner may appeal the board's decision to a court of competent jurisdiction within statutory deadline, and I turn to Kevin to make sure that's correct, but that's what I understand. Judicial review, court reviews, administrative record, and that's where the records come into play. And that's why I want to document everything as we move forward to make sure we're crossing T's, dotting I's, and that we may still be wrong. We may be told by a court that, no, I'm sorry, the appeals are, but at least we showed that we had due cause to bring it to bear And
The
that,
court will tell you is if it didn't happen in writing, it didn't happen.
that's exactly,
So
yeah.
I want to hear about your conversation.
Nope. Funny, my mom had the same. No, anyway, but I'm sure I'm getting the paper done. Summary of roles. I really do appreciate again, even though he's obliged, I guess. I didn't know that. But Adam's been a good partner to work with. And Marshall County in general, the planning commission, they have walked me through the portal. They have been patient, lovingly, gently telling me how many ways I screw up in the morning. No, it's been a good relationship and I've really enjoyed getting to know. Haven't really been able to sit down yet, but we'll get there. He's gonna, as far as I understand it, conducts the inspections, document violations, presents the finding to the board along with me. I'd like to be with him as his wingman on all this and monitors compliance. Building commissioners review inspection findings, initiates administrative process, issues notice of orders, oversees enforcement. Kevin, you're involved in all of that. Town of Culver Unsafe Board, Building Board conducts hearings, determines unsafe status, issues binding orders, and authorizes enforcement action. And the one thing I left out because I am not thorough sometimes is the back process, right? Which has been outlined on here, but the follow-up process would begin at that point through the enforcement action, right? I didn't detail everything, but that would be included in enforcement action. That is where I'm at.
I've seen these all the way through to conclusion.
Yeah.
We've had hearings.
Any-
Most time by that time, people don't even show up. The judge just gives you a
Hits
direction for it.
Yep.
Generally, but
That's what I would anticipate by that point. I think that's pretty thorough moving forward. I'll announce tonight, but I did get contacted by an interested party looking into possibly pursuing the building inspector's job. Just initial interest. He'd be a qualified individual, I think. Experienced individual at least. So in that little rainy day, anytime. No,
That was terrible.
I don't-
Nice job.
but in the meantime, I've got a great cast of support in that if we do get a case, I'm going to use these guiding documents. I'm confident that I can pick up the phone and call Kevin for advice and guidance. Adam, again, anybody up in Marshall County seems to be a great partner to have with me. I have you guys to follow up with, but hopefully I get out of the seat before we get one of
I
these in
used
here.
to take donuts.
Right.
So I just,
Um,
I had that job site.
on those lines, and this is going to bleed back into off of the unsafe topic a little bit, but I think it's part of my capacity too, as town manager, at least, at the very least. We have several properties that are reoccurring complaints about. And there's a sensitivity to this, right? These properties are owned by longstanding homeowners in Culver. And there's always the complaints by people, sometimes new, sometimes not new, coming in. And there seems to be this tension, right, with these properties. And what I would prefer, rather than being combative about, is forming a mutual communication and partnership with maybe remedy some of the property issues. One of the things that I'm very interested in is community service, and I've got a whole football team at my disposal. We have to be careful. Obviously, there's certain limitations to what they can and can't do in community service. I don't want them up there on a roof, reliable. But there's opportunities for cleanup, property cleanup, and allowing the property owner to come to us. Nobody wants somebody knocking on their door. But having a resource that's standing and available to the property owners, there's numerous reasons why these properties may need some help, right? Older citizens, busy citizens, maybe sometimes a lack of funds to pay for it. But rather than complain about it and listen to it in the town meetings, I would prefer to provide resources and possible relationships, because these are valuable members of the community, and it's not something we have to endure constantly or turn a blind eye to. And sometimes, like with the ordinances, when you get to that point, it almost, when you're starting to talk about ordinances, you're forming this combative almost sense and defensiveness, right? Nobody wants to hear that. But rather than that, I'd rather be positive and provide a community service opportunity for our kids at high school. I also got them going to be working on weeds for me, and they're going to get their swimsuits on and pull some weeds out in the lake. Good kids. And I thought maybe we could also include something like that in it. We're talking about property cleanup, weeds, trash.
They used to do the senior service projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I will help with those. 100%.
They did it, they did it a few years in a row, and then of course she graduated and it passed on, and COVID happened, I think, too.
And a lot,
Something interfered.
100%.
It was a great program,
It
and
would
a lot of elderly benefited from it.
put my lawyer hat on for a minute.
Yep, please do.
It'd be probably advisable not to have that be the town's project. I mean, I think it's a great idea. It'd be
Right.
great to, because nobody, and Joe was alluding to this, nobody wants it to be a punitive process.
Right.
They'd much rather, if there's somebody financially strapped or elderly or whatever, to offer a helping hand, like, hey, we can, there's some help here if you want to clean this up, fix this up. And there could be a fundraising campaign, maybe locally, and raise some funds and have somebody create a LLC and have a conversation with an insurance agent. So if the football team wants to volunteer, they're volunteering through that. And
Okay.
there's an insurance policy in case one of them falls off a roof. I don't really want you to have.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
I don't want them to fall off a roof, please.
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
Number one, I don't need, I got 30 guys. I don't need football players wounded. No,
Right.
but
But you gotta separate yourself. You gotta think about, even though you're doing a good thing.
yeah,
You have to think about liability.
agreed. One of the things that just bothers me, and it goes back to that, how we file complaints.
Yeah.
So many times I think people are looking at it through a very specific lens of theirs. Sometimes privileged, sometimes not understanding. They're not looking at it from the property owner's perspective. And so when they levy these complaints, they're not sensitive to the person who's spent their whole life there sometimes. And I don't mind, an ordinance is an ordinance, but there seems, I want to remove the smack of judgment from it. Does that make sense? And that's why I want to go to a filing system that's a little bit more formal than rather just entertaining it during a town council meeting. It's just, that's just too visceral and it's not the appropriate way, in my opinion, but I put it before the council.
I agree. I mean, I drive by homes and think, how can they live like that? But I don't think they see it like that.
Number one, and
They view it differently than I do.
I don't see their challenges, Dana. I don't see their world. I do, I try to.
Good.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
they're out
it.
there chop
Yeah.
down trees.
Yeah.
Right.
Trim or-
Yeah,
I do
100%.
think what we could be supportive of, you know, how the one school organization, what Elliot's group that does the building and trade.
Yeah, yes,
So I wouldn't be opposed to like, you know, maybe we're CRC or whatever is funding tools for that organization or whatever organization. You know, I could see us that because they're doing public service.
Sure, that's a better.
Jenny, that's actually really interesting.
Giving money or resources is not
They're-
gonna put you in.
They're developing that second class over there, from what I understand, of the younger kids. What maybe a great project for them would be going into some of these areas and offering like as a project,
Yeah.
Sure.
Clean
same
up,
way Andrea did
simple
with her.
repair,
Yeah, it can be done as. a service.
100%. It would be great, valuable experience for the trades. Number one, help some of our citizens get to the
And the
point.
trades can recruit labor too.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they can certainly have people beyond the trade and join them in that effort, but at least they have an established organization that we have other ways we could support.
Yeah.
And it's careful, again, it's gonna be important how you communicate.
Yes,
We refer a project to the school.
yes,
Now the school's
Yes.
going to take down the school's insurance.
that's right.
Yeah.
I'll talk
I'm
to her.
just, that's what you gotta think, unfortunately.
No, it is, Kevin, and I agree. But point behind it is there's better community ways of solving problems.
Yeah.
And so we need to seek a little harder sometimes, I think. So, thank you.
Kevin, I have a couple of things that I'd like to add.
Yes, sir.
And I sit on the county, I've been on for about 5 years on the county unsafe building board. I think once you establish a case that you want to bring to this board, it's important that you have follow-up board meetings. And it doesn't have to be every week. But believe me, once you get into this thing and the things that I've heard, and Kevin, you experienced this too, it's going to be unbelievable. Some of the things that you're going to hear
Yeah.
as to why you can't. But I think it's important to keep the board out in front. And
That's a good way to phrase it, Bill.
For a half an hour before a regularly scheduled thing. Once you file one of these things, I don't think it's necessary until you have a case. But once you have a case, I think it's very important to make certain you have follow-up board meetings to stay on, because you've got to put pressure on these people.
Okay. Check, heard that.
And the second thing I have to add is I think that we differentiated between unsightly and unsafe, but I think it's a great idea to involve the building trades or one thing or the other. But I think those are the ones you want to limit to the unsightly,
Yes, sir.
not the unsafe.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Got it.
The school would probably agree with you.
Yeah, I'm sure Karen would. Yeah. All right. Duly noted, sir. Duly noted. All right. Guys want a little bathroom break before we go into the next one? Okay.
Go ahead with what we were going to say though.
No, sir. That's it. That's it.
No, I thought you were talking about the property or something like that.
Oh, no, I threw it in there. I don't have any specific properties tonight. There are a few that's on the radar, but again, I'd like to invite probably next week. I might invite Adam down for a lunch, take him through town, drive through, and just have that. I really haven't been able to meet him in person, really, but have lunch and have his expertise and his eyes put on Culver and see where I need to focus. And then I'll update. I can send an email on that update to let you guys know what I find out. So, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. You're welcome. I hope so.
Joe's not been for this. It's nice to see it in writing in a step-by-step format. You took a lot of time with it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sitting through the case last year and just some things has been on my mind. So thank you. All right. Get your popcorn. Get your soak ups.